think my first encounter with performance poetry was going to a poetry slam organized by the spoken word organization Word Forward. And that was probably back in 2010.
Yeah, I think for me, my introduction to spoken word poetry was a bit different. Started off in the classroom really, because I was taught by Pooja Nancy. I still call her Miss Nancy because she taught me. And so she used to organize speakeasy, and it used to be an open mic that was organized regularly. And I used to go to these performances, and that's where I saw Deborah Emanuel, who was a power-packed performer, amazing performer. And then every other week there'll be someone who's different, who has a different voice, who has a different approach to spoken word poetry. And I think that's sort of the genesis of it.
I would say one person would be Mark Nair. I think he has really contributed a lot to the scene. He used to organize a sort of a interdisciplinary arts festival that featured a lot of spoken word called Lit Up, the Lit Up Festival. And he also helped to put together this all-female spoken word group called the Scallywags back in, I think, 2012. And they put on some incredible performances, and I heard about them, and eventually I joined them. And it was just a really magical kind of time, just getting to do whatever we wanted and getting to perform and write whatever we wanted. And sort of the germ of the idea came from him. And he's also really put together a lot of opportunities for people and really put spoken word out there on the sort of the Singapore art scene.
I have to say that this reminds me that a lot of spoken word artists tend to be people who are not just sort of focusing on their own work, but they've always been people who have brought other people with them, like younger people or people who might not actually know much about spoken word poetry but are interested or intrigued or curious about it. And I think for me especially, Destination Ink. was such an important place, and Charlene Sheppinson, who was always very, very, very encouraging. And I think she has a way of creating a very comfortable space, a safe space. And a lot of people came and they tried spoken word poetry, and I think in my generation, a lot of people who still sort of perform sort of came from there. It was a very instrumental place for many people.
So obviously it's very different now because we're under the pandemic conditions. It's hard to even and risky just to gather in a place. I've been running a spoken word event called Spoken Bird. I started it in 2017, and since I would say April last year, it's moved into becoming an online show. And so you can just look for Spoken Bird poetry on Facebook. So we run a monthly show, and it's free. And the cool things, we feature poets from both Singapore and overseas as well. And it's an open mic, so you can perform from the comfort of your room.
As much as we have all these online spaces that are happening and all these video projects that are coming, I think that there's magic to having smaller spaces and having in-person events. And I think that once COVID ends, hopefully all these things can resume, and there's still people out there organizing these spaces. Because I think that's very different. Performing to a crowd, being able to see reactions, I think that's very much a part of going back and rewriting and coming back and performing different pieces.
Yeah, there's nothing like just performing to a bunch of people in the same room and just feeling their reactions and just realizing what works, what doesn't work just by the nuances of people's faces.